You are not one of us. You never were." The words echoed through the sacred gathering hall of Silvermoon Pack, bouncing off ancient stone walls that had witnessed countless ceremonies, but never a condemnation quite like this one. Ilara stood in the center of the circle, her wrists bound with silver-laced rope that burned against her skin, leaving angry red welts that would scar. Around her, the entire pack had gathered, hundreds of faces she had known her whole life, now twisted with disgust, disappointment, or worse, indifference. Beta Marcus stood before the carved wooden throne where Alpha Gregor sat, his weathered face grave as he held up a velvet pouch that supposedly contained the evidence of her crime. Stolen relics from our most sacred vault. Silver dust blessed by the moon goddess herself, meant to protect our borders during the upcoming war with the Nightshade Pack. And we found it hidden in your pathetic excuse for a dwelling. His voice carried across the hall, each word a nail in her coffin. Ilara wanted to scream, to protest, to make them understand that she had been set up, but her voice caught in her throat. She had always been voiceless here, the Omega who could not shift, the defective wolf who brought shame to her bloodline. Her eyes found her former friend Cassandra in the crowd, the Beta's daughter, standing beside her father with tears streaming down her beautiful face. False tears. Ilara had seen those same eyes cold and calculating just 2 nights ago when she had stumbled upon Cassandra and 3 rogues exchanging leather pouches in the forest, silver dust changing hands for gold coins. She had seen the transaction, heard Cassandra promise more if they could provide weapons forged with the sacred silver. It was treason of the highest order, selling their pack's blessed resources to rogues who would undoubtedly sell them to their enemies. But Cassandra had seen her too, had smiled that perfect smile, and said they would talk about what Ilara had witnessed. Instead, Cassandra had gone to her father and spun a tale of catching Ilara red-handed, stealing from the vault that only high-ranking pack members could access. The irony was not lost on Ilara. She, who could barely enter the pack house without permission, was being accused of infiltrating their most protected sanctuary. "The punishment for such betrayal is clear," Alpha Gregor announced, rising from his throne. He was old now, his dark hair threaded with silver, his once powerful frame slightly stooped, but his voice still carried the weight of absolute authority. "You will be cast out, but not simply exiled to wander as a rogue. No. For this crime, you will be taken to the border of the Forbidden Forest and left to whatever fate the wilderness decides for you." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The Forbidden Forest was not merely dangerous, it was death itself, a sprawling expanse of ancient woods that predated even the oldest packs, filled with creatures that existed outside the normal hierarchy of their world. Wolves who entered that forest rarely returned, and those who did came back changed, broken, whispering of shadows that moved with intelligence and malice, of beasts larger than any natural animal, of a darkness that seemed alive. It was said that the forest belonged to the Alpha King himself, Theron Blackthorn, the most powerful Lycan in existence, who ruled from his fortress deep within those woods and commanded creatures that nightmares were made of. "Please." The word finally escaped Ilara's lips, barely a whisper, but in the heavy silence it carried. "Please, I did not do this. I would never betray the pack. You have to believe me." She looked around desperately, searching for even one sympathetic face, one person who might speak for her. Her eyes landed on her mother, standing near the back, her face turned away. Her mother, who had always been ashamed of having a daughter who could not shift, who had stopped defending her years ago. There would be no help from that direction. "You would never betray us?" Cassandra's voice rang out, clear and strong as she stepped forward. "You who have brought nothing but shame to this pack since the day you failed your first transformation. You, who we have fed and sheltered out of mercy despite your uselessness. And this is how you repay our kindness?" The crowd murmured in agreement. Ilara felt something inside her crack, a pain deeper than any physical wound. They dragged her from the hall as the sun began to set. loading her into a reinforced cage in the back of a transport vehicle. 4 guards accompanied the journey, none of them meeting her eyes, none of them speaking to her. She was already dead to them, already erased from their pack bonds. The ride took 3 hours, the vehicle climbing into the mountains where the air grew thin and cold, where the trees grew so thick that even midday seemed like dusk. When they finally stopped, Ilara could feel it. The wrongness. The forest stretched before them like a living entity. The trees twisted and ancient, their bark almost black in the fading light. Fog rolled between the trunks, moving in ways that fog should not move, curling and reaching like fingers. Even from inside the cage, she could hear the sounds. Not the normal sounds of a forest, not birds or insects or the rustle of small creatures. These were deeper sounds, older sounds, growls that resonated in her chest. The crack of branches that sounded like bones breaking. Whispers in a language she did not know, but somehow understood in her soul, meant danger. Out. One of the guards opened the cage, his hand shaking slightly as he cut the ropes binding her wrists. They wanted her mobile, wanted her to have the illusion of a chance to survive, even though everyone knew the truth. This was an execution, just slower and crueler than a quick death would have been. Ilara stumbled out onto the rocky ground, her legs weak from hours of confinement. She wore only the thin dress she had been wearing when they arrested her. No shoes, no supplies, nothing. The guards backed away quickly, climbing into the vehicle. The youngest one, barely 20, looked at her for a moment with something that might have been pity. "I am sorry," he mouthed, before the door slammed shut. Then they were gone. The sound of the engine fading into the distance, leaving her alone at the edge of the forbidden forest as darkness fell completely. Ilara stood frozen for a long moment, every instinct screaming at her to run anywhere but forward into that darkness. But where would she go? Back to a pack that had condemned her? Into the mountains where she would freeze before morning? At least in the forest, death might be quick. She took her first step into the tree line, and immediately the temperature dropped. Not gradually, but all at once, as if she had passed through an invisible barrier. The fog wrapped around her ankles, cold and damp, and she heard that whisper again. Closer now. Words she could almost make out. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches reaching toward her like clawed hands. She walked because there was nothing else to do, pushing through underbrush that tore at her dress and skin, stumbling over roots that seemed to deliberately twist under her feet. How long she walked, she could not say. Time felt different here, elastic and strange. It might have been minutes or hours when she heard the first howl. It came from behind her, deep and resonant, nothing like the howls of her pack. This was larger, older, filled with a hunger that made her blood run cold. Ilara began to run, though every rational part of her brain knew running was useless. She could not outrun whatever was hunting her. She could not fight it. She could not even shift to give herself a chance. She was prey, and she had always been prey. And now she would die as prey. Her foot caught on something and she went down hard, her hand slamming into the rocky ground beside a stream she had not seen in the darkness. Pain exploded through her palms as skin tore. Blood, hot and bright, dripped onto the stones. And the forest went silent. Completely, utterly silent, in a way that was somehow more terrifying than all the sounds had been. Ilara lay there, breathing hard, waiting for whatever would come. She heard the footsteps first. Not paws, feet. Heavy boots against the forest floor, approaching with measured confidence. Then she heard breathing, controlled and steady. And finally a voice. "What do we have here?" The voice was deep, masculine, carrying an accent she could not place, and an authority that made her wolf, that pathetic, weak thing that had never surfaced, suddenly stir inside her for the first time in her life. Ilara tried to push herself up, to face whatever was coming, but her arms gave out. She collapsed back onto the rocks, gasping. The footsteps came closer. She could feel eyes on her. Assessing, calculating. A wolf, the voice continued, closer now, almost directly above her. But not quite. Interesting. And bleeding on sacred ground. Even more interesting. Hands, large and surprisingly gentle, turned her over. Ilara found herself staring up into the most extraordinary face she had ever seen. The man was massive, well over 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed carved from granite. His hair was black as midnight, falling past his shoulders and his eyes. His eyes were not the normal gold of a wolf, or even the amber of a strong alpha. They were silver. Bright metallic silver that seemed to glow in the darkness, reflecting the moonlight that had just broken through the canopy above. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, dangerous and perfect. "Please," Ilara whispered, though she did not know what she was asking for. A quick death, perhaps. Mercy. Anything but the fear that was threatening to swallow her whole. The man tilted his head, studying her with those impossible silver eyes, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You are on my land," he said slowly, each word measured. "In my forest, bleeding on stones that have not seen human blood in 300 years. And you come here wearing the scent of fear and betrayal and something else. Something I have not smelled in lifetimes." He leaned closer, and Ilara realized he was inhaling her scent the way wolves do when identifying someone. His eyes widened fractionally. "Impossible," he breathed. Then the world exploded with sound and movement. From the darkness around them, creatures emerged. Wolves, but not like any wolves she had ever seen. They were enormous, some standing as tall as horses, with fur that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their eyes glowed in shades of red and amber and green. Behind them came other things. Bears that walked upright. Great cats with fangs like sabers. Birds with wingspans that blocked out the moon. All of them converging on this spot. On her. Ilara screamed, trying to scramble backward, but there was nowhere to go. The stream was at her back, the creatures in front, and the silver-eyed man still crouched beside her. She was going to be torn apart by a dozen different predators, and she could not even shift to fight back. But the creatures did not attack. They approached slowly, almost reverently. And then, one by one, they lowered themselves to the ground. The wolves dropped their heads, their tails curling under their bodies in submission. The bears bent forward on their massive front legs. The great cats flattened themselves against the earth. Even the birds landed and folded their wings, their heads bowing. They were all bowing. To her. "What in the name of the moon goddess?" the silver-eyed man whispered, and for the first time, there was something other than control in his voice. There was awe. He stood slowly, his eyes moving from the creatures to Ilara and back again. "They recognize you. They are submitting to you. These beasts that answer only to me, that I have commanded for centuries, they are treating you as their superior." Ilara could not process what she was seeing, could not understand it. The largest of the wolves, a creature with fur as black as night, and scars crossing its massive face, crawled forward on its belly until its head was inches from her bleeding hand. It whined softly, a sound of devotion, and then gently licked the blood from her palm. The moment its tongue touched her skin, something happened. Power surged through Ilara like lightning, starting from the point of contact and racing through her entire body. It was not painful, but it was overwhelming, like waking up after being asleep her entire life, like taking a first breath after being underwater. Her vision sharpened until she could see every detail in the darkness, every leaf, every stone, every hair on the creatures surrounding her. She could hear the heartbeat of the silver-eyed man, strong and steady. She could smell the forest itself, rich and complex, layers upon layers of life and death and growth. And she could feel them, all of them. Every creature in this forest, she could feel their presence like stars in her consciousness. points of light connected to her by invisible threads. "What is happening to me?" She gasped, her voice stronger now, resonating with something that had not been there before. The man dropped to one knee beside her, his silver eyes wide with something that looked like disbelief. "You are awakening," he said simply. "The question is, awakening as what?" He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and placed his palm against her forehead. The moment his skin touched hers, another surge of power rocketed through them both. Alara felt it slam into her like a tidal wave. Recognition, connection, completion, the mate bond. She knew without being told because every cell in her body was screaming it. This man, this dangerous, powerful creature crouching beside her in the darkness, was her mate. Her true mate, the one the moon goddess herself had chosen for her. She saw the knowledge hit him at the same moment, saw his pupils dilate, saw his breathing change. "No," he said. But it was not a rejection. It was denial of something impossible. "You cannot be. The Moon Whisperers are extinct. They were hunted down and killed centuries ago. Every last one of them." "Moon Whisperers?" Alara repeated, the word feeling strange on her tongue, but somehow right, somehow familiar, like a name she had forgotten but her soul remembered. "I do not know what that is. I am just an Omega from Silvermoon Pack. I am nobody." "You are not an Omega." The man's voice was firm, absolute. "You have never been an Omega. You are Moon Whisperer, daughter of the oldest bloodline, the ones who could speak to the moon itself and command all creatures that walk in her light. That is why you could never shift. You are not meant to have one form. You are meant to command all forms." He pulled his hand back and stood, pacing now, his movements agitated. "But this is impossible. I would have known. The moment you were born, I should have felt it. Every creature of the night should have felt it. How did you hide for so long?" Alara struggled to her feet, her legs shaky but stronger now, that power still flowing through her veins like electricity. "I did not hide. I did. Not even know. My mother never said anything. My pack treated me like I was defective, broken. They just exiled me here to die because they think I stole from them." "Exiled?" The man's voice went cold, dangerous. "They exiled a Moon Whisperer. They cast out the one being who could have protected them from anything, who could have made their pack untouchable." He laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "The Silvermoon Pack has just made the most catastrophic mistake in their history." Turned back to Alara, and she saw his face clearly now in the moonlight that streamed down through the canopy. He was not just handsome, he was devastating, the kind of beautiful that was almost painful to look at. But more than that, he radiated power. It rolled off him in waves, primal and absolute. This was not just an alpha. This was something far beyond that. "You do not know who I am, do you?" he asked, his head tilting slightly. Alara shook her head mutely. A small smile curved his lips, not quite reaching those silver eyes. "I am Theron Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of the Forbidden Forest and all the wild lands beyond, commander of the ancient beasts and keeper of the old ways, and as of this moment, you are under my protection." If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Alara felt her knees start to buckle again at his words, at the weight of what he was claiming to be. The Alpha King. The boogeyman that mothers in her pack used to frighten children into behaving. The legend who supposedly lived for centuries, who could command armies of creatures, who answered to no one but the moon goddess herself. And he was standing in front of her, claiming she was his mate, claiming she had power she had never known existed. "I do not understand any of this," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. She was shaking now, reaction setting in, the E. Adrenaline that had kept her moving beginning to fade. "I am nobody. I am nothing. I cannot even shift. How can I be what you are saying?" Theron moved quickly, closing the distance between them before she could react. He shrugged off the long black coat he wore and wrapped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her, warm and heavy, carrying his scent. Pine and snow and something wild, something that made her wolf stir again, stronger now, pushing against her consciousness with an urgency she had never felt before. "You are cold and injured and in shock," he said, his voice gentler now. "We can discuss your heritage and your power later. Right now, you need shelter and food and rest. Can you walk?" Elara nodded, not trusting her voice. Theron studied her for another moment, then seemed to make a decision. He turned to the assembled creatures. "Return to your territories. Spread the word through the forest. The Moon Whisperer has awakened. She is under my protection and the protection of the ancient accords. Anyone or anything that threatens her answers to me personally." The creatures responded immediately, rising and melting back into the darkness with barely a sound despite their size. Within seconds they were alone, except for the large black wolf who had licked her hand. It remained, watching Theron with intelligent eyes. "Yes, you can stay, Fenrir," Theron said to the wolf with what might have been affection. "Someone needs to make sure I do not do something stupid." The wolf made a sound that could only be described as approval, then moved to walk beside Elara, its shoulder nearly as high as her waist. She reached out tentatively and placed her hand on its head, expecting it to pull away, but instead it leaned into her touch, a rumble of contentment vibrating through its massive frame. "Come," Theron said, gesturing into the forest. "My fortress is not far. We will be there before dawn." He set off at a pace that should have been difficult to maintain, but Elara found herself keeping up easily, that new power thrumming through her muscles, making her stronger, faster. Fenrir walked on her other side, a silent guardian. The forest seemed different now, less menacing, almost welcoming. She could feel it responding to her presence, the trees bending slightly as she passed, the fog parting to create a clear path. They walked in silence for nearly an hour before Elara finally found her voice again. "Why did they do it?" she asked quietly. "The Moon Whisperers. What did they do that was so terrible they were hunted to extinction?" Theron glanced at her, his silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. They did nothing wrong. That was the problem. They were too powerful, too pure. They could command any creature of the night, could call upon the moon's blessing to heal or harm, could see the true nature of every being they encountered. No one could lie to them. No one could manipulate them. And most importantly, they could not be controlled by alphas or kings or anyone else. They answered only to the goddess and their own conscience. He paused, stepping over a fallen log. 500 years ago, a coalition of alpha packs decided that such power was too dangerous to exist outside their control. They banded together and hunted the Moon Whisperers systematically. Men, women, children. They killed them all. Or so everyone believed. But if they killed everyone, how am I here? Elara asked. Someone must have survived. Someone must have hidden. Theron nodded slowly. Yes, and they hid so well that even I, with all my resources, never found them. They must have suppressed their power, lived as normal wolves, passed down the bloodline in secret, hoping that one day it would be safe for the truth to emerge. He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. But it is not safe. It will never be safe. The moment word spreads that a Moon Whisperer lives, every pack in the territories will either try to kill you or capture you, to use your power for themselves. You understand this, yes? You cannot go back to your old life. That life is over. The word should have terrified her, but instead Elara felt a strange sense of relief. Her old life had been nothing but shame and rejection. Why would she want to return to that? I have no desire to go back, she said firmly. They made their choice when they abandoned me to die. Something flickered in Theron's eyes. Approval, perhaps, before he turned and continued walking. Neil. Trees began to thin ahead, and Elara caught her first glimpse of his fortress. It was not what she expected. Not a dark, foreboding castle, but something ancient and beautiful, built into the side of a mountain, the stone seeming to grow naturally from the rock itself. Towers reached toward the sky, their tops disappearing into low-hanging clouds. Lights glowed in hundreds of windows, warm and welcoming. A massive gate stood open, and as they approached, Alara saw guards stationed along the walls. Not human guards or even normal wolves, but the same kind of enormous creatures that had bowed to her in the forest. They straightened as Theron passed, their eyes tracking to Alara with obvious curiosity. "My king," one of them rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. "You bring a guest." "I bring much more than that, Grim," Theron replied, not slowing. "Assemble the council. We have matters to discuss that cannot wait until morning." They passed through the gate into a courtyard that could have held 1,000 people. Despite the late hour, the fortress was clearly awake. Figures moved in the shadows, and Alara could feel eyes on her from every direction, assessing, wondering. Theron led her through a pair of ornate doors into an entrance hall that took her breath away. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, supported by columns carved to look like ancient trees. Tapestries hung on the walls depicting battles and ceremonies, wolves running beneath a full moon, scenes from a history she did not know. Everything spoke of age and power and permanence. "This way," Theron said, guiding her through a maze of corridors to a staircase that spiraled upward. They climbed for what felt like forever, before finally emerging into a hallway lined with doors. He stopped at the last one, producing a key from somewhere. "These will be your chambers," he said, pushing the door open. "No one will disturb you here without permission. You are safe." The rooms beyond were stunning. A sitting area with plush furniture arranged around a massive fireplace. A bedroom visible through an open door with a bed large enough for 4 people. Windows that looked out over the forest, now peaceful in the moonlight. "There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit well enough for now," Theron continued, his voice carefully neutral. "A bathing room through there. Food will be brought up shortly. Is there anything else you need?" Alara turned to face him, suddenly aware that they were alone, that the mate bond was pulling at her with almost physical force, urging her to close the distance between them, to touch him, to claim and be claimed. She could see in his eyes that he felt it too, the tension radiating from his body as he held himself rigidly in place. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. "You could have left me in the forest. Let nature take its course. Instead, you brought me to your home, gave me protection, gave me chambers that look like they belong to someone important. Why?" Theron was quiet for a long moment, his silver eyes searching her face. "You know why," he finally said, his voice rough. "You felt it the same moment I did. The bond. You are my mate, Alara, the one the moon goddess chose for me. I have lived for 643 years, and in all that time I never once felt the mate pull until tonight. 643 years. The number hung in the air between them. He was not just old, he was ancient, had lived. Through centuries of history, had seen the rise and fall of countless packs. And she was 19, had lived her entire life in one small pack, had never been farther than the mountains beyond their territory. "I do not know how to be anyone's mate," Alara whispered. "I do not know how to be what you think I am. I am just a girl who could not shift, who everyone hated, who was thrown away like garbage." Theron moved then, crossing the distance between them in 2 long strides. He cupped her face. In his hands, his touch gentle despite his size and obvious strength. "You are not garbage. You have never been garbage. You are the rarest, most precious thing in this world, a moon whisperer, my mate. And I will spend however long it takes teaching you to see yourself the way I see you, the way the goddess sees you." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she had not realized had fallen. "But not tonight. Tonight you need rest. Tomorrow we will begin to figure out how to keep you alive and unlock the power that is your birthright." He stepped back, breaking contact, and Alara felt the loss like a physical ache. "Lock the door behind me," he instructed, moving toward the exit. "Trust no one but me and Fenrir until I tell you otherwise. There are those even within my own fortress who would see a moon whisperer as a threat rather than a blessing." "Will I see you tomorrow?" Alara asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Theron paused in the doorway, looking back at her over his shoulder. "You will see me every day for the rest of your life, little wolf. That is what being mates means. I am yours and you are mine, from now until the moon itself falls from the sky." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, leaving Alara alone with her spinning thoughts and the wolf Fenrir, who had settled himself in front of the fireplace as if he had always belonged there. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Alara stood frozen for a moment, trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. This morning she had woken up in her small, shabby room in the pack house, worried about finding enough food, avoiding Cassandra and her cruel friends. Now she stood in a fortress that belonged to the Alpha King himself, wearing his coat, having been told she was his mate and the inheritor of a legendary bloodline everyone thought was extinct. It seemed impossible. It felt like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. She moved to the window, looking out over the forest that had almost been her grave. The moon hung full and bright above the trees, and as Alara stared at it, she felt something stir deep inside her. Not her wolf, but something older, something that lived in her very bones. The moon seemed to pulse with light, or maybe that was her imagination. But then she heard it. A voice, ancient and feminine, whispering in a language she should not understand, but somehow did. "Daughter of the moon, child of the first light, your awakening has begun, but your trials are far from over. Those who cast you out will seek to reclaim what they abandoned. Those who fear you will seek to destroy you. But you are not alone. Never alone. We are with you, as we have always been, waiting for you to remember who you truly are." Alara gasped, stumbling back from the window. Had she really heard that? Or was she losing her mind from stress and exhaustion? She looked down at her hands, her torn and bloody palms that Fenrir had licked. The wounds were healing. She could see them closing, the skin knitting back together with unnatural speed. Within moments, there was nothing left but faint pink lines that faded even as she watched. This was real. All of it was real. She was not crazy. She was not defective. She was something else entirely. Something powerful. Something that scared people. The thought should have frightened her, but instead, for the first time in her life, Alara felt a spark of something that might have been hope. A knock on the door made her jump. "Food, miss," a gruff voice called. The king ordered it sent up. Alara moved to the door, but did not open it immediately, remembering Theron's warning about trust. "Leave it outside," she called back. "I will collect it in a moment." "As you wish." She heard footsteps retreating, waited another minute, then cracked the door open carefully. A tray sat on the floor, laden with bread and cheese and meat and fruit. More food than she would normally see in a week. Her stomach growled, reminding her she had not eaten since yesterday morning. She brought the tray inside, locking the door again behind her. Fenrir watched her with those intelligent eyes as she settled into one of the chairs by the fire and began to eat. The food was incredible, fresh and flavorful, nothing like the scraps she was used to receiving in the pack house. "What am I going to do?" she asked the wolf, not really expecting an answer. "To tune." Her surprise, Fenrir rose and padded over to her, resting his massive head on her knee. She felt a surge of warmth through their connection, something that might have been reassurance or encouragement. "You can understand me, can you not?" she said slowly. "Not just my words, but my thoughts, my feelings." The wolf huffed softly, his tail giving a single wag. Alara felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were not from sadness. For her entire life she had been alone, isolated even, within her own pack. Now, in this strange place with these strange beings, she finally felt like someone cared whether she lived or died. "Thank you," she whispered, stroking Fenrir's head. For protecting me. For staying with me. She finished eating and made her way to the bathing room, which turned out to contain a large copper tub that someone had already filled with steaming water. Rose petals floated on the surface, and the scent was heavenly. Elara stripped off her ruined dress and Theron's coat, sinking into the hot water with a groan of relief. Every muscle in her body ached from the ordeal in the forest, and the heat helped ease the tension. She scrubbed away the dirt and blood, watching the water turn murky, and tried not to think about how close she had come to dying tonight. When she finally emerged, feeling more human than she had in days, she found a nightgown laid out on the bed. It was simple, but made of fine material, soft against her clean skin. She pulled it on and climbed into the bed, which was so comfortable she nearly wept again. The mattress seemed to embrace her, the blankets warm, but not heavy. Fenrir had followed her into the bedroom, and now settled on a rug beside the bed, clearly intending to stand guard through the night. Elara thought she would lie awake for hours, her mind too full of everything that had happened, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She sank into sleep like sinking into deep water, and with sleep came dreams. She saw the moon, huge and bright, filling the entire sky. She saw wolves running, hundreds of them, thousands, from every direction, converging on a single point. She saw a woman with silver hair and eyes like starlight, her hands raised to the heavens, power flowing from her fingertips like liquid light. She saw the woman turn, and Elara realized with a shock that she was looking at herself, but older, stronger, wearing robes that shimmered like moonlight on water. This is what you will become, the dream version of herself said. This is your destiny, but the path to reach it is treacherous. You must learn to trust your power, trust your mate, and trust yourself. The darkness is coming, little sister. It has been waiting for centuries for a chance to rise again, and only you stand in its way. Elara wanted to ask what darkness, what danger, but the dream shifted. Now she saw a Silvermoon pack, her former home, in chaos. People running, screaming, fire in the streets. Cassandra, standing in the center of it all, her hands raised, dark energy crackling around her fingers. Not silver-blessed energy. Something else. Something wrong. She is not what she seems. A voice whispered, the same ancient female voice from before. She is shadow-touched, corrupted by forces that predate the packs themselves. She framed you not out of simple cruelty or greed, but to remove you before you could awaken and stop what she has set in motion. The rogues she trades with are not mere criminals. They serve the Shadow King, an entity that seeks to extinguish the moon's light forever. The image shifted again, showing Theron standing at a precipice, silver energy and shadow energy clashing around him, tearing at him from both sides. He was shouting something she could not hear, reaching for someone she could not see. Then the dream dissolved into darkness and whispers, and a sense of impending doom that made her chest tight. Elara woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in bed. Pale dawn light filtered through the windows. Fenrir was on his feet immediately, ears forward, alert for danger. But there was no danger, at least not physically present. The danger was coming, though. She could feel it in her bones, in that new power that hummed through her veins. It was just a dream, she told herself. But she did not believe it. That had not been an ordinary dream. That had been a vision, a warning, a glimpse of what was to come. She climbed out of bed, moving to the wardrobe Theron had mentioned. Inside, she found a selection of clothing, mostly in dark colors, all made of quality material. She chose a simple black tunic and leather pants, finding boots that fit surprisingly well. As she dressed, she caught sight of herself in a full-length mirror and stopped, staring. She looked different. Her skin seemed to glow faintly, as if lit from within. Her eyes, which had always been a muddy hazel, now held flecks of silver that caught the light. Her dark hair, usually dull and lifeless, now shone with health, falling in thick waves past her shoulders. She looked like someone else. Or maybe, for the first time, she looked like herself. A knock on the door interrupted her examination. "Alara?" Theron's voice, even through the heavy wood, sent a shiver through her. "Are you awake? The council is assembled. They are demanding to meet you." Alara crossed to the door and opened it. Theron stood in the hallway, dressed in formal black clothing that emphasized his powerful build. His silver eyes swept over her, something hot and possessive flashing in their depths before he controlled it. "You look rested," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Did you sleep well?" "I had dreams," Alara replied. "Visions, I think. About what is coming. About danger." Theron's expression turned grave. "Tell me as we walk. The council grows impatient, and these are not beings you want to keep waiting." He offered her his arm, a surprisingly courtly gesture. Alara took it, feeling a jolt of electricity where their skin touched. Fenrir fell into step beside them as they left her chambers and began navigating the fortress's corridors. "Tell me about these visions," Theron prompted. Alara described everything she had seen. The woman with silver hair, the chaos at Silvermoon Pack, Cassandra with dark energy, the warnings about a Shadow King. With each detail, Theron's expression grew darker. "Shadow-touched," he muttered. "I have not heard that term. Used in centuries. If what you saw is true, if this Beta's daughter has truly been corrupted by shadow magic, then Silvermoon Pack is in more danger than they can possibly imagine. Shadow-touched cannot be reasoned with or saved. They are consumed completely, body and soul, turned into vessels for ancient darkness." "What do we do?" Alara asked. "We?" Theron glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "We do nothing. That pack cast you out, left you to die. They made their choice. Let them face the consequences. But innocent people will suffer," Alara protested. "Children. Families who had nothing to do with the decision to exile me. I cannot just let them die." Theron stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "You have a kind heart. That is admirable. It is also dangerous. Kindness will get you killed in this world, especially once word spreads about what you are." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. "But you are right. A moon whisperer is meant to protect, not seek vengeance. We will discuss options with the council." They continued walking, climbing another staircase, then another, until they reached a pair of massive doors carved with images of the moon in all its phases. 2 guards stood watch, creatures that looked almost human, but not quite. Their features too sharp, their eyes too bright. "The Alpha King and the Moon Whisperer," one of them announced, pushing the doors open. The chamber beyond was circular, with a domed ceiling painted to look like the night sky. Around the edges of the room stood 12 figures, and as Alara entered, every one of them turned to stare at her. They were not human, not even close. Some were clearly shifters like Theron, radiating alpha power. Others were different species entirely. A woman with skin like tree bark and eyes like moss. A man whose form flickered between solid and shadow. A creature covered in scales that caught the light like jewels. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. "Council," Theron said, his voice formal now, carrying absolute authority. "I present to you Alara, last known descendant of the Moon Whisperer bloodline, inheritor of the ancient gifts, and my mate." The silence that followed was deafening. Then everyone spoke at once, voices raised in shock and disbelief, and in some cases, barely concealed hostility. "Impossible," someone shouted. "The Moon Whisperers are extinct." "This is a trick," another voice claimed. "Some kind of elaborate deception. If she truly is what you claim," a woman with silver eyes similar to Theron's said coldly, "then she represents a threat to the balance of power we have maintained for centuries. Perhaps it would be better if the extinction remained complete." Theron's power exploded outward, slamming into the room like a physical force. Several council members staggered under the weight of it. "You will show respect," he snarled, his eyes blazing with silver light. "Or you will leave this council and never return. She is my mate. She is under my protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me. Is that understood?" Grudging nods answered him, though Alara could feel the hostility still simmering under the surface. These were ancient beings, used to power and influence, and she was an unknown variable that frightened them. "Perhaps a demonstration," the woman with tree bark skin suggested, her voice like wind through leaves. "If she truly has the gift, she should be able to prove it." "What did you have in mind, Silva?" Theron asked, his tone suggesting he knew he would not like the answer. Silva smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too pointed. "The bond with creatures of the night is the most basic of Moon Whisperer abilities. Let her call something. Not the tame beasts of your forest, Theron. Something wild. Something that has never known a master. If she can command it, we will believe." Theron looked at Ilara, concern in his eyes. "You do not have to do this," he said quietly. "I can order them to accept you without proof." But Alara could see the doubt in the other faces around the room. If she did not prove herself now, she would always be questioned, always be suspect. She stepped forward, squaring her shoulders. "How do I do it?" she asked. "How do I call?" Silva's smile widened. "You simply reach out with your power and ask. If the creature deems you worthy, it will come." Ilara closed her, thinking about the power she had felt awakening last night, the connection to the forest and its inhabitants. She reached inward, finding that humming energy, and then pushed outward, not sure exactly what she was doing, but trusting her instincts. In her mind, she formed a simple request. "Come to me. I need you." She felt the call leave her like a ripple on water, spreading outward, touching everything in its path. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she felt something respond. Something big, something ancient, something that made even her new power feel small in comparison. The doors to the council chamber blew open with enough force to tear them from their hinges. A creature entered that made Alara's breath catch. It was a dragon. Not a huge dragon from children's stories, but still massive, easily twice the size of a horse. Its scales were deepest midnight blue, almost black, and they reflected the light from the chamber's torches like stars. Its eyes were gold, ancient and intelligent and wild. It had never been tamed, never been commanded, had lived in the mountains beyond the forest for centuries, answerable to nothing and no one. Every member of the council stepped back, several of them raising defensive magic. Dragons were not creatures that could be controlled, not even by the Alpha King. They were too old, too powerful, too independent. For one to enter the fortress at all was unprecedented. For it to enter in response to a call was impossible. The dragon's eyes found Alara, and it moved toward her with slow, deliberate steps, its claws clicking on the stone floor. She knew she should be terrified, but she was not. She could feel its curiosity, its interest, the ancient intelligence studying her. It stopped inches away, its massive head lowering until they were eye to eye. Then, slowly, deliberately, it bent one front leg and lowered its head further, the unmistakable posture of submission and respect. "Worthy," a voice rumbled in. Alara's mind, not spoken aloud, but communicated directly. "Moon blessed, star touched. I remember your kind. I remember the old oaths. You may call upon me 3 times in your life, daughter of the first light, and I will answer. Choose your moments wisely." Then the dragon straightened, turned, and walked out of the chamber as calmly as it had entered, leaving stunned silence in its wake. Ilara swayed, suddenly exhausted, and felt Theron's arm around her waist, supporting her. "That," Silva said into the silence, her voice filled with awe, "is not something I have witnessed in my 800 years of life. A dragon bowing to any being, offering a triple oath, acknowledging ancient accords that predate even the oldest of us." She looked at Alara with new respect, and perhaps a touch of fear. You are indeed what you claim. The council acknowledges this. The others murmured agreement, their hostility replaced by wariness, but also acceptance. Then let us discuss the real reason for this meeting, Theron said, guiding Alara to a chair and making sure she was steady before addressing the council again. We have a threat emerging, shadow-touched, possibly multiple instances, connected to a resurgence of the Shadow King cult. They have infiltrated at least one pack that we know of, possibly more, and their first action was to identify and eliminate the one being who could pose a threat to their plans, a Moon Whisperer. Shadow-touched, the man who flickered between solid and... Shadow spoke up, his voice like dry leaves. I had hoped never to hear those words again. When the last Shadow King was defeated 500 years ago, we thought that darkness was sealed permanently. Clearly we were wrong, Theron said grimly. The question is, what do we do about it? Alara saw visions last night. Silver Moon Pack is compromised, likely already under attack or soon to be. They exiled her, yes, but many innocents will suffer if we do nothing. Why should we care about the fate of one pack? Someone asked. Because if Silvermoon falls to Shadow, Theron replied, his voice hard. It will not stop there. Shadow spreads like infection. One pack becomes two becomes four. Before we know it, we will be fighting a war on all fronts. Then we send forces, Silva said practically. We cleanse the corruption before it can spread. It is not that simple, Alara spoke up, her voice stronger now. All eyes turned to her. In my vision, Cassandra was not working alone. She had help from inside the pack, people in positions of power. If we just attack, we could be playing into their hands, starting a conflict that distracts us from the real threat. What do you suggest? Theron asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Alara thought about it, pieces of a plan forming in her mind. I go back, she said finally. Not as an exile, but as what I truly am. I reveal the corruption, expose Cassandra and anyone working with her. Moon Whisperers can see the truth of people, yes? Can see through lies and deception. I use that ability to identify all the shadow touched before they can do more damage. Absolutely not, Theron said immediately. You are suggesting walking back into the den of people who tried to kill you, who may already be corrupted by shadow magic, with minimal training in your abilities and no backup. It is suicide. Not if I have backup, Alara countered. Not if you send some of your people with me. Not if I go in strong and prepared. Instead of weak and alone. She stood, facing him directly. Theron, you said yourself that Moon Whisperers are meant to protect. This is my chance to do that. To save lives. To prove that I am more than they thought I was. Theron stared at her for a long moment, conflict clear on his face. The mate bond pulled at both of them, urging him to protect, urging her to trust. Finally he sighed. We train you first, he said. For at least a week. We unlock your abilities, teach you to control your power, make sure you can defend yourself. Then we consider this plan. Fair? Alara nodded. That was more than she had hoped for. Fair. Then this council is dismissed, Theron announced. I will keep you updated on our progress. In the meantime, increase patrols along all our borders. If Shadow is rising again, we need to know where and how fast. The council members filed out, most of them giving Alara long, assessing looks as they passed. When the chamber was finally empty except for her, Theron, and Fenrir. Theron turned to her with an expression that was equal parts frustrated and impressed. You are either very brave or very foolish, he said. I have not decided which yet. Maybe both, Alara admitted. But I meant what I said. I cannot just hide here while people die, even if those people rejected me. It is not who I am. No, Theron agreed quietly. It is not. Which is exactly why the goddess chose you for this. A Moon Whisperer needs to be compassionate, needs to care about all creatures, even those who have wronged them. You will make a worthy heir to that legacy, Alara. Of that I have no doubt. He reached out and took her hand, the contact sending sparks up her arm. But you will also drive me insane with worry. That much is also certain. Ilara managed a small laugh. I suppose that is part of the mate package. So it seems, Theron said. But he was smiling now, a real smile that transformed his face from merely handsome to absolutely stunning. Come. If we are going to train you, we should start immediately. I want to see exactly what you are capable of. He led her out of the council chamber and through more corridors, down several flights of stairs, until they emerged into an enormous open courtyard. The space was clearly used for training, with weapons racks along the walls, targets set up at various distances, and a large sand-covered area for sparring. Several people were already training, stopping what they were doing to watch as Theron. And Ilara entered. Everyone out, Theron ordered, his voice brooking no argument. Training is postponed until this afternoon. There were some grumbles, but no one dared disobey. Within minutes, the courtyard was empty, except for them and Fenrir, who settled in the shade to watch. First lesson, Theron said, moving to the center of the sand area. Your power comes from your connection to the moon and to the natural world. Unlike normal shifters who draw power from their wolf, you draw power from everything around you. The earth, the sky, the very air you breathe. Do you feel it? Ilara closed her eyes and concentrated. Yes, she could feel it now that she knew what to look for. A constant low hum of energy, coming from all directions, flowing through her and around her. I feel it, she confirmed. Good. Now, I want you to try to consciously direct that power. Nothing dramatic, just something small. Make that leaf move. He pointed to a single fallen leaf a few feet away. Ilara, focused on the leaf, reached for the power she could feel, and pushed. The leaf exploded into dust, disintegrating completely. Theron raised an eyebrow. Or that. That works too. Perhaps we should start with control before we work on raw power. They spent the next hour on basic exercises, moving small objects without destroying them, creating small breezes, making plants grow slightly faster. Each time Ilara tried something, the results were unpredictable. Sometimes nothing happened. Sometimes too much happened. By the end, she was sweating and frustrated. This is harder than it looks, she muttered, collapsing onto the sand. Theron sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. You have had your power for less than a day. Most shifters spend years learning to control their wolves. You are trying to control something infinitely more complex. Be patient with yourself. I do not have years, Ilara said. People are dying right now. Every day I spend training here is... Another day, Cassandra and her shadow-touched allies spread their corruption. True, Theron acknowledged, but a dead hero helps no one. You go in unprepared, and you will fail. Worse, you will give them a moon whisperer to corrupt, and then we will have a real nightmare on our hands. The thought sobered Ilara immediately. She had not considered that she could become a weapon for the enemy. Point taken, she said quietly. Then we continue training. What is next? Next, Theron said, standing and offering her his hand. We work on seeing truth. That will be the most important skill for what you want to do. Come, we need a volunteer. He led her back into the fortress, down to what appeared to be a common area where off-duty guards and soldiers gathered. Theron scanned the room and pointed to a young man, barely older than Ilara herself. You, come here. The young man jumped up, clearly nervous to be singled out by his king. Your name? Theron asked. Marcus, my lord. Good. Marcus, I want you to tell us 3 things. 2 truths and 1 lie. Mix them up however you like. Marcus looked confused but nodded. My favorite color is blue. I have 2 sisters. I once fought off 3 rogues single-handedly. Theron turned to Ilara. Now look at him. Really look. Do not use your eyes. Use your gift. Moon Whisperers can see the truth written on people's souls. Focus. Ilara stared at Marcus, reaching for that power again. For a moment, nothing happened. Her vision shifted suddenly, and she could see him differently. Colors swirled around him, bright and clear. But when he had spoken certain words, the colors had flickered and dimmed. "The middle one," she said slowly. "About the sisters. That is the lie. He has brothers, not sisters. 2 of them." Marcus gaped at her. "How did you... yes, my lord. That is correct. I have 2 brothers." Alara felt a surge of excitement. "I saw it. When he lied, the colors around him changed, got darker." "Exactly," Theron confirmed. "Truth shines bright. Lies create shadows. The more you practice, the clearer it will become, until you can see someone's true nature with just a glance. Shadow-touched will appear completely black, like they are wrapped in darkness. You will not be able to miss them." They spent the next several hours having Alara practice with different volunteers, getting her used to reading truth and lies. By dinner time, she could identify a lie almost instantly, though it still required concentration. "You are a natural," Theron said as they walked to the dining hall. "Most Moon Whisperers needed weeks to develop that skill. You did it in hours." "Maybe because the need is so urgent," Alara suggested. "Maybe my power knows time is running out." They entered a massive dining hall filled with long tables where people were gathering for the evening meal. All conversation stopped as they walked in. Theron guided her to a raised table at the front of the room, clearly meant for leadership. "Let them see you," he said quietly. "Let them get used to the idea that you belong here, that you are not just a guest, but something more permanent." Alara understood what he was really saying. He was claiming her publicly, showing his people that she was his mate, that her status was equal to his. It was both thrilling and terrifying. They sat, and immediately servants brought food. The meal was elaborate, multiple courses, each more delicious than the last. Around them, conversation gradually resumed, though Alara could feel eyes on her constantly. "Is it always like this?" she asked Theron quietly. "All this formality?" "Only for public meals," he admitted. "When it is just us, we can be more casual. But appearances matter, especially now. I need my people to accept you, to respect you. That starts with me showing you the honor you deserve." He reached under the table and took her hand, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. The casual touch sent warmth flooding through her, the mate bond humming with contentment. "Does it get easier?" she asked. "The bond, the constant pull." "No," Theron said honestly. "It only gets stronger until we complete the mating. Even then, the bond will always be there, always connecting us. You will always feel when I am near, always know if I am hurt or afraid or happy, and I will feel the same from you. It is both a blessing and a curse." "When will we..." Alara trailed off, not quite sure how to phrase the question. "Complete the mating?" Theron finished for her. "When you are ready. When you understand what it means, what you are agreeing to. Mating is permanent, Alara. There is no divorce, no separation. Once our souls are bound, they are bound forever, through this life and whatever comes after. I have waited 600 years for you. I can wait a bit longer to make sure you are absolutely certain this is what you want." The words should have scared her, but instead they made her feel safe. He was not pushing, not demanding. He was giving her time and space to adjust to the massive changes in her life. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being patient, for being understanding, for not treating me like I am weak or broken." "You have never been weak," Theron said firmly. "Underestimated, yes. Mistreated, absolutely. But never weak. The strength it took to survive what you endured, to keep your spirit intact despite years of being told you were worthless, that is a strength most people never have to develop. You are remarkable, Alara. I hope you come to see that in yourself. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming?" They finished dinner, and Theron walked her back to her chambers. At the door, he paused, looking like he wanted to say something but was not sure how. "What is it?" Ilara asked. "Sleep with me tonight," he said, then quickly added, "Not like that. I mean actually sleep. Let me hold you. The bond is pulling so hard it is painful to be separated from you for too long. I promise I will be a perfect gentleman. I just need to be near you." Ilara considered it. Part of her said it was too soon, too fast. But another part, the part connected to him through the mate bond, was screaming yes. "Okay," she said, "but just sleeping." Theron's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Just sleeping. Give me 10 minutes to change and I will come back." He disappeared. Down the hall, and Ilara went into her chambers. She changed into the nightgown from the previous night, brushed out her hair, and was just settling into bed when there was a soft knock. "Come in," she called. Theron entered wearing simple sleep pants and a loose shirt, his feet bare, his hair down around his shoulders. He looked younger like this, less kingly, more approachable. He climbed into the bed beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Come here," he said, opening his arms. Ilara hesitated for only a second before moving into his embrace. The moment she settled against his chest, the constant pull of the mate bond eased, satisfied to have them close. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, and feel the rise and fall of his breathing. "Better?" she asked. "So much better," he murmured, his arms tightening around her. "Sleep, little wolf. Tomorrow we train more. The day after we begin planning your return to Silvermoon. But tonight we just exist together. That is enough." Ilara closed her eyes, surrounded by his warmth and scent, feeling safer than she had ever felt in her life. For someone who had spent the last 19 years alone, this was a revelation. She was not alone anymore. She had a mate. She had a purpose. She had power she was only beginning to understand. The girl who could not shift was gone. In her place was something new, something powerful, something that would make everyone who had underestimated her very, very sorry they had thrown her away. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she slept in the arms of the Alpha King, and for the first time in her life, Ilara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be happy. Maybe she deserved to be loved. Maybe she had always been exactly what she was meant to be, and the world just had not been ready to see it yet.